With no formal training, I learned to become a successful grant writer. And this is the story of what I've learned from about 20 successful grant applications worth about $14 million. So, first, we'll cover these topics. Why does anybody want to give you money? How do you find the right grant to meet your needs? What's the structure of this request for money that you'll be making? How do you write a good proposal? What don't you include, and how do you keep on doing it over and over? So, first, grant agencies not only want to, they need to give away money. In some cases to fund research, in other cases to address real needs, sort of maybe poverty needs or education needs, equities, and so on. In some cases, it's to advance a political agenda. Companies want to reduce their tax exposure through deductions and also to buy goodwill in the community. But also for wills and foundations. For example, my personal foundation is required each year to give away 5% of its assets to charitable causes. But there's so many different grants for so many different purposes. How do you find one that fits your needs? Well, you want to match your needs to the grant agency's needs. And you can't ask them to kind of change what they want because they often don't have flexibility. They get a lot of proposals and they have to treat each one uniformly with strict award criteria. They can't just change it to meet your needs. So you can revise your project maybe to fit the grant agency's priorities. Now, what kind of grant agencies are out there? Well, this is an example I prepared for a Philadelphia Medical School faculty. They were aware of U.S. government grants like from the National Institutes of Health. They never thought of the Department of Defense that may wanted to fund, let's say, the development of prosthetic limbs. The state governments similarly have grant opportunities from Department of Health, Department of Education, and so on. Each region has trusts and foundations and companies that will fund projects in their geographical region. The foundations listed here just happened to be in the Philadelphia area, and they funded medical kinds of projects. The medical faculty weren't aware of them. Similarly with corporations. Well, how do you know what grant is available? Grant agencies release a request for proposals notice, an RFP. Federal grants always show up in the Federal Register. That's published daily. People in charge of grants for school districts and universities look at the Federal Register daily to see what grant opportunities are coming up. The RFP says a bunch of things. It says, what's the purpose of the grant? When is it due? Who can apply for it? What can you spend money on if you get the grant? How much is available? And how long would the grant last? How many do they expect to be funded? What amount of money might you expect? And how will they decide what is awarded? In other words, what is their scoring criteria for the grant applications? So the RFP may need all of these topics, all of these sections, if it's big money or a federal grant. For a small foundation or corporate grant, it's much, much simpler. But we'll cover all of these items, a brief abstract, a needs assessment statement, what are your goals and objectives, what are the activities that will meet them, the management plan, who's going to do it, the timeline, what's your schedule, what money do you need, how are you going to tell if it works or not, how are you going to disseminate both the PR and also the results. So the abstract is just a short thing, one paragraph, one page. You may want to write that after the whole grant application is done so that you know what you've written. It must be easily understood because you don't know who'll be reviewing it. They may not be aware of your situation or what you're talking about. But you only have about 15 to 30 seconds to capture their attention, to make them want to read on and really pay attention. It helps if you focus on like one big idea Why should they fund you? In other words, why is this topic important to them and to the larger world? What's the valuable outcome that might be expected? And why should they believe you that you can do what you propose? So here's a section of an abstract from one of my successful grant applications. I called it Project Tilt, Technology Improving Learning Today, a new slant on learning. I liked to create catchy little titles that would stick in their mind. It branded the proposal, it branded the project. The statement in yellow here actually should have been the first sentence because it, in one sentence, states the need. Project Tilt primarily targets the 60% of Bethlehem's about 4,000 high school students who do not meet Pennsylvania academic standards. Somebody reading that knows instantly what its purpose is. Here's another example. This was Project Prize, when academic standards were just being introduced before they were required. And this grant received a $1 million award. So its statement, Prize will codify and disseminate effective standards-based practices in staff development, instructional design and delivery, assessment, intervention, progress reporting, and school restructuring. In one sentence, it says kind of what it's going to do. Later on in the abstract, it says who are the partners who are going to do this. This is the group that can make it happen. Moravian College, the Public Library, Apple Computer, and a local video production company. You need to clearly state your need and how it connects to the agency's need. This need must be statistically or numerically demonstrated. It can't be just, oh, I want to do this, this would be cool. Demonstrate that need with respected data sources. Government statistics are great. Your assessment of need, your statement of need has to be compelling. Like, this is a real need because your need has to be stronger than the other proposals. But it can't be hysterical. They'll think you are crazy and wouldn't be able to do it. Some reviewers will know what you're talking about. They'll know the domain. Others won't be. So you have to connect the dots that, oh, we live in a low poverty area. Many of our school students are not meeting academic standards, and the school district has not been able to purchase technology to support this. This grant will provide technology equipment and teacher training to help prepare our students for their future. So, again, they have to have a reason to believe you that you want to meet this need. You don't just want their money. So if you can say something like, the district has been working on this for years, each school has been able to create a small computer lab, and now we need money for a high school computer lab that meets current corporate employment standards. So here's an example. The need is simple. Students in the target population need to achieve academic success. Nobody can argue with that. And then there's a goal and objective that supports that. Here's another one where there was no data, so we had to get it. So this was to create increased library access. So in interviews, we got information from librarians, and this is what they reported. And we've done surveys, and the surveys show that over 50% of our students and 80% of our teachers have internet access at home. Therefore, they are in a good position to begin to access school library catalogs from home. And then a long-standing need. So again, to support the need, this also was awarded. The need is supported by goals and objectives. Maybe a goal is, I want to be a chess master. Maybe my goal is I want to walk on the moon. Goals are the ends to which you work. And objectives are the measurable steps that you need to take to get to those goals. Outcomes are the actual end products of the project that you say you will make. For example, the Academic Standards Grant had as its end product a 25-tape series of academic standards best practices. That was disseminated to every school in the state. It's your job to write goals, objectives, and outcomes that are clearly understandable to non-specialists. Each RFP differs in the terminology, the requirements, so it takes a lot of work for you to do this well. You have to relate how will the objectives meet the goals, how will the goals meet the need. So here's an example. Goal to establish connectivity among libraries. Objective, measurable. We're going to implement a district-wide web-based catalog. It's a yes or no. It's not, we have it half implemented. It's a binary. It's a checkbox. We've completed this objective. Same with objective B. Enable searching catalogs. It's a yes or no. Easily measurable, easily put to a timeline. So the most of the narrative is a description of a series of activities that will carry out the grant objectives. And you need to connect each activity to the objective and the goal that it implements. Each activity has a timeline. When are you going to do it? Budget. What's it going to cost? How do you know if it's successful? Somehow you have to make this stuff clear and explicit. Again, you're responsible for connecting the dots so the reviewers see, oh, step by step, you understand how it's going to be done. You got to make it clear and strong. So here's, again, an example. Activity, short and sweet. A specific brand we know of will be purchased and installed on a new district server. Bang. Okay, I know what that's going to be, what they're going to do. So who's going to carry this out? Well, who's responsible for the whole project, and what's their percent focus? This is like half of their job will be to manage the grant. Are they a full-time grant manager? What's their expertise? Do they have a doctorate in this? Have they studied it? Have they done it already? Have they gotten grants before? Have they published on this? And who's responsible for each step or each activity? That stuff has to be connected to the timeline and the activities and so on. If it's a complex grant or you have many partners, there's an organizational structure that you have to describe clearly. That can be hard to do. You have to show that there's enough time and staff allocated so that you can, in people terms, actually make this work. So if it's complex, spelled out, okay, how often are you going to meet? You're going to have a website to communicate status and problems. How are you going to resolve problems and collaborate? Here's an example of an organizational chart for a grant to teach American history, and this would have, if it had been funded, would have involved 27 school districts in Northeast Pennsylvania, 2 intermediate units, 12 museums, historical societies, and it shows clearly who's responsible, who's the PI, meaning the primary investigator, and the co-PI. So points to remember here. The abstract, easily understood, big idea. You got 15 to 30 seconds to make your point. You document a need. It's not an opinion or something I want. Your goals are clearly expressed and supported by objectives that are measurable. Your activities include specific details, so they know you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. You're not making it up as you go along. And the scope of the grant should be something that you can actually do in that amount of time with that amount of money to meet the goal that you say you will. So this will be continued in part 2, where we'll talk a little more about the passion, the dreams, the adventure that you can add texture, but not to make it seem like a science fiction thing.